حضورنا الكريم، نرحب الآن بمدير مركز التميز في الصيدلانيات الجزئية في جامعة كاليفورنيا سان دييغو، الدكتورة غادة المطيري.
Ladies and gentlemen, Director of the University of California San Diego's Center of Excellence in Nanomedicine, Dr. Adah Al Mutairi.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here at the 9th Global Competitiveness Forum. As scientists and physicians and healthcare providers, we work tirelessly to discover drugs, test them in cell and animal models, and then we go through the treacherous regulatory process to begin clinical trials, which are laborious, time-intensive, very costly, and then we move on to the commercialization of these drugs and diagnostics. And this process costs about $1 billion in the United States, and going from bench to bedside. But what if I told you past that point, that's when the largest healthcare challenge starts? Because drugs don't work on patients who don't take them. So of every 4 patients that are described a drug by their doctor, 1 won't even fill out the prescription. Of those that fill out the prescription, half of the time, they won't take the drug and certainly won't take it on time. And as a scientist and as physicians, we know how important, and as pharmaceutical scientists, how important the right dose at the right time is for therapy. And so, this challenge costs us, in the United States, $300 billion annually in hospitalization costs. Now, I'm not surprised that patients don't take their medicines on time. I'm surprised that we expect patients to take their medicine on time. I'm an average person with average discipline in doing things, and I find it hard to exercise as much as my doctor says I have to. And my dentist is never happy or satisfied with the amount of flossing that I floss my teeth. Always wants me to floss more. And I have to pay my bills once a month. And yet, truth be told, I struggled to do that, and I was late on my bills. Until autopay, online autopay. It did miracles to my credit score. It reduced my mortgage for my home about half because my credit score went up. And so, even though it was really important for my financial health to remember to pay my bills once a month, I still struggled to do that. So I want to do for drug delivery what autopay did for me, for my financial health. I want to go to the doctor once a year, have them inject me in my joints with my anti-arthritis drug, inject me in the eye. I have a strong likelihood for age-related macular degeneration in the eye, and have that drug depot reside for that entire year. And when my disease condition flares up, the drug is dispensed, and when the disease conditions subside, the drug release subsides. So that's the idea that I hope to convince you is worth pursuing this challenge. So in designing a system that is responsive to disease, we had our eyes on inflammation. And what you see in front of you is the cover of Time magazine almost a decade ago, highlighting to the public the role that inflammation plays in all major diseases. So it seems like all major diseases begin with mild chronic inflammation. And in looking if there are systems, drug delivery systems out there that are responsive to inflammation, we found none. And I'm a materials chemist. I'm a polymer chemist, so a plastics chemist. And we couldn't find any materials, plastics, that could then be used, engineered into drug delivery systems. These materials would be sensitive or responsive to inflammation. And it turns out it's quite challenging to develop a material that is very stable in the body for a year, yet is able to degrade rapidly and sensitively to the very weak signals of inflammation. So some of the characteristics of inflamed tissue, chronic inflammation, is that there's mildly oxidative stress. So mild buildup of oxidative species and mildly acidic pH. These signals are very weak. So we, as I mentioned, I'm sort of a nanoscale architect and construction worker, and so we began designing these nanoscale materials that you see cartooned in front of you here. And so these are polymers, plastics, built from small molecules, threaded together into large polymers or plastics, and they are designed with chemistry that responds to a particular stimuli. And what's nice about polymers, it's hard to get away from polymers even if your life depended on it. Polymers are everywhere. In fact, we're made out of polymers. And one of the nice properties of polymers is the stunning array of sizes and dimensions that we can process them into. And in this case, we formulate these capsules that you see here, a polymer shell, and within the shell, we can entrap a large array of molecules, biologically active molecules, proteins, DNA, viruses. And when we do that, we essentially turn off their chemistry, their ability to interact with the body and do their therapeutic job, or if they're a diagnostic, we're able also to turn off their ability to signal. And of course, these designer polymers and coatings, on command, we engineer them to degrade on command. So before I go any further, I want to orient you to the nanoscale a little bit. So this is an animation that I'll start, and it's true to dimensions. So for example, the distance between my heart and my fingertips on average is about 1 meter. Our thumb is about 100 times smaller than that, okay? Our blood vessels are another 10 times smaller than that. And inside our blood vessels, we can pack about 100 cells. Our red blood cells, which you see here, are about 100 times bigger than some of these nanoparticles that I'm describing. These are the size of viruses. Now, we wanted to design a system that is stable in the body for about a year, but yet when encountering inflammation, the signs of inflammation, oxidative species, and mild pH will degrade. That's challenging. But what we've done in the past in our center is we've engineered into these polymers 2 mechanisms, 2 approaches, 2 strategies that enabled us to overcome a similar challenge in light activation. So we work on light as an important stimuli or trigger for degradation, especially very benign light, low energy light. And we hit the same problem with that it's hard to develop something that is responsive to that low energy. But the way we did it at that time was through an AND logic gate mechanism. How many engineers are in the room? Okay, great. AND logic gate mechanisms, 2 inputs to allow 1 output. That gives you the stability. Now, the second mechanism that we built in is an amplification, chemical amplification mechanism. When one event takes place, it triggers the release of a chemical that catalyzes a chain reaction that degrades the system. Okay? So, actually watching is easier than me describing, so watch this short video. So these are the polymers. These are the particles made of the polymer, the designer polymer. When we shine light on it, a photon is captured by one of the molecular entities that then catalyzes a domino effect that degrades the entire strand. You don't need to degrade the whole particle. Just degrading a strand will compromise the particle and allow the payload that's inside to escape. So that's essentially what we do. So this, seeing is believing. What you see in front of you are actual pictures, electron micrographs of these types of particles, and this is what they look like when they degrade and the inside cargo is released. Now, our previous work with light-activated systems garnered a lot of media attention because remember, this is a very low energy light. So it was highlighted by a number of media outlets, but one that I'm particularly proud of is that the NIH director, Francis Collins, in his address to US Congress in 2012, highlighted this work as one of the 4 breakthroughs of that year. So we used the same strategy, but this time for inflammation. And we've developed that about 3.5 years ago. It was first published and patented. And since then, we've started using it for a number of inflammatory diseases. And we started with ocular diseases, diseases of the eye. Who's heard of 23andMe? Put your hand up. You can sequence your DNA, and I did that a few years ago, and it turns out that I am 4 times more likely to get age-related macular degeneration than the average person. May or may not happen, but at any rate. So if you do suffer from age-related macular degeneration, then you have to go to the doctor once a month and have the doctor inject you with this treatment called VEGF trap. This treatment is about 10 years old. It was considered in 2006 one of the top 10 breakthroughs of that year. And it's helped rescue a lot of people from blindness. But still, going to the doctor once a month, to your doctor, and getting that injection is cumbersome. So what if we developed this kind of drug depot where we entrap VEGF trap, which is the breakthrough therapeutic for age-related macular degeneration and a number of other retinal degeneration diseases, into these kinds of capsules, inject them in the back of the eye, and have the VEGF trap dispensed when the inflammation flares up in the eye, and the release subsides when the disease conditions subside as well. So we first step is to see if these materials last in the eye for that long, and we color them. These are particles. We color them in red, and they do. They last for quite a bit of time. Almost 70% of the particles are still intact, or the nanocapsules, if you will, in the eye. So what you're seeing in front of you is a look into the eye. Are these particles, these nanocapsules, intact and stable? Because if they degrade too rapidly, we've got to go back to the drawing board. So that was great. Next step was to see the therapeutic outcome of these materials. And I promise you this is most scientific of the entire talk. So what you have in front of you here is the diseased region. This doesn't show up very well, but that's okay. You've got saline in black, so that's your control. And dumb delivery, what I mean by that is polylactic glycolic acid, which is the FDA-approved polyester that is used in drug delivery. And it degrades in a constant manner. It doesn't respond to disease conditions, okay? So it has sustained release of the therapeutic. And then our smart delivery, smart automated delivery system that I just showed you. And what you'll see is the only one that really makes a difference in reducing the diseased region is a system that's smart and responsive to flare-ups of the disease. So this is what what you see in front of you is a flat-mounted retina, And what you're looking for is that those tortuous green blood vessels, we dye them in green so we can see them, are now more homogeneous and more regular. So this is what it looks like when you are able to cure the retina from retinal degeneration or angiogenesis. So the other thing that I really wanted to do with this system is to develop a method to detect early signs of disease. And as I just mentioned to you, inflammation, almost every day now, papers and studies come out describing the role that early inflammation has in a number of diseases. And so if you're able to detect early signs of disease, if you're able to detect inflammation, you can detect early signs of disease. So this is an animation of what, this animation is what we envision, our goal, and that is to develop a contrast agent for the physicians, for the radiologists to use, that could tell them that you've got chronic mild inflammation areas, and so that is abnormal and further health management is needed. So this is a diagnostic that is injected IV into the person, can travel, these are particles that can travel throughout the body and the blood vessels, and in areas where there's a lot of inflammation, mainly macrophages producing ROS, the capsule degrades and the diagnostic is released. And when the diagnostic is released, we want it to light up and let the radiologist know that this is a sign of inflammation. Something's wrong. We need further attention. So how do we plan to do that? Well, how many of you heard of MRI? Okay, great. MRI, in about 40% of MRIs, you have to be injected with a contrast agent. What does that contrast agent do? What it does, it brightens the signal of water around the contrast agent. MRI imaging is water imaging. And when you inject the contrast agent, wherever it goes, you see a bright signal. Not because the contrast agent is lighting up, because the water around it is lighting up. So what we do in this case, in this design, and this is the first of its kind, is we encapsulate the contrast agent in these polymeric coatings that are hydrophobic and don't allow any water inside. So essentially we've silenced the contrast agent, okay? Remember, we designed these particles, this polymer coating, to degrade in mild inflammation. So what you have below here is what we call an MRI phantom, and these are the particles sitting in this well, and this is the MRI image of these particles. And you notice that the image is dim. These contrast agents are not able to brighten the signal of the water around them. They're sequestered, turned off, isolated, and trapped in these capsules. Now, when we add disease conditions to this phantom, you see it brightens up right away. Okay, so what did we want to do with this? So in cardiology, one of the grand challenges in cardiology is to be able to determine vulnerable plaque from stable plaque. When we're born, our blood vessels are smooth with no fatty deposit. But as we age, we build up fatty deposits in our blood vessels. Now, sometimes these fatty deposits are inflamed, and sometimes they're stable. And that makes a big difference. Inflamed plaque can rupture and cause a heart attack, a stroke. Stable plaque doesn't have that problem. So patients with vulnerable plaque are at a very high risk of a stroke, and patients with stable plaque are not at that high risk. So how does a physician determine which patient is vulnerable and which patient is stable? As of yet, we don't have a method to do that. Clinicians don't have a method to do that. With this technology, we believe we can do this, because our particles degrade in inflamed plaque and light up, but in stable plaque, they don't degrade, and therefore they don't light up. So this is an image of these mice that we have in the lab. We feed them a high-fat diet. They undergo surgery to inflame their plaque. So we have some plaque that's inflamed, some plaque that's stable. On the left, you see one of our mice. The plaque is stable, and you don't see any signs of inflammation with the contrast agent. With vulnerable plaque, do you guys see how this area here is brighter? Put your hand up if you see what I'm talking about. Yeah. Great. So that's because the contrast agent now is activated. It lights up. And that could be an indication that this patient has vulnerable plaque and is at high risk for a stroke or a heart attack. What we did next with these kinds of systems is we tested them in tumors, in arthritis, and in paw edema. So tumors are also mildly inflamed, and this is an image that I'm very proud of, because when we inject the contrast agent in the tail vein, only the tumor lights up. Now, anyone in this field knows that when you inject particles into the bloodstream, the liver does what it's supposed to do. The liver takes up the particles, right? It's a big problem. But in this case, only the tissue that's inflamed lights up. We actually take the liver as our background. In radiology, there's target to background ratios, and if you're above 5, you've got a good contrast agent, activatable contrast agent. So these are 8, 10, and 15. And that's because, and by the way, our target, what we're going against, is the liver. So this is unprecedented, and this contrast appears in about 3 hours. Tumors, arthritis. So we tail vein inject here. The particles travel everywhere. They only light up where the animal has induced arthritis. That's because activation, release only happens in those areas. Particles go to the liver. A lot of them go to the liver. Most of them go to the liver. But the particle is stable because of that AND logic gate mechanism. So I want to, I hope I've convinced you today that we can create smart drug delivery systems that take the patient out of the equation. We don't have to rely on the patient. We can develop something smarter that makes the patient's life easier. And that's because I want to quote Buckminster Fuller, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the old or existing system obsolete." I want to thank you for your attention. This is the work of many students and postdocs in the lab. These are the current students in the lab on the left, former students and my collaborators, and our current funding from our generous supporters. Thank you very much.